Makerborn. Book 1 of Maladies of Empire. If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? Shakespeare, The Merchant of Venice. Chapter 1. A mother's rage. What wouldn't Alandra do to reclaim her stolen child? Steal, betray, murder. Carve a bloody path through hell. Fate's ass. She'd burn the whole damn world to ash if that's what it took. She swept her eyeglass across Keep Lublinin, grip slick with sweat, searching for her daughter. The glimmering metallic structure squatted in Great House Lublinin's bustling market square, like a giant miser overseeing his hoard. The keep loomed over merchant stores, carver bars, and descendant manses, casting long shadows as the sun crawled toward the horizon. Its towers pierced the bruised heavens, where great war hawks the size of ponies nested and shrieked. Statues of descendant Lublinin's ancestors encircled the highest spires, judging all with contempt. Descendants, great houses, lesser houses, the whole rotten brood, ruled the Salvian Empire like jealous thieves, clutching a crown they'd pinched off a corpse. Betin the Godslayer's blood supposedly ran through their veins. She reckoned Betin's story was campfire rubbish to justify the descendants' claim to power. She eyed the keep's arched gate again for the 20th storming time, watching a trickle of laborers enter, and growled, "She's supposed to be here." Her shoulders slumped, and she squeezed her eyes shut. What if Whaler's information was wrong? It couldn't be, could it? Perhaps Agnieszka spent the summer at the coast. What if Sati Lublinin was displeased with her, punished her, beat her, and ordered the guards to use her as a plaything? What if? Enough, she snarled. It will work this time. It had to. The gate was the only entrance into the keep, and she felt it eyed her back. The hair on her neck prickled. Silentium always did that. The gate contained that rare ore that dampened Sonomancer's abilities. The first feeling was a dull pressure behind the eyes. The closer she got, the faster the metal would drink in her sonomancy, weakening her like a pup. The gate shimmered with a dark mist from the metal's natural properties, like a mirror reflecting a foggy night. House Lublinin guards lounged nearby, white and gold cloaks snapping in the breeze, hands close to halberds. The keep's barracks housed hundreds more. The walls were a patchwork of dark stone and silentium blocks. Windows were barred with the damn metal. Sentries walked the perimeter, holding shields laced with it. All simple and obscenely expensive measures to prevent sonomancers from infiltrating. All of it familiar. The Lublinin country estate outside Kresna, the Fire Island villa. Different walls, but the same protections, which her previous failed incursions could attest. Her heart thundered against her ribs, and sweat trickled down her spine more than it had a right to on a cool summer's eve. There has to be a way in. There always was. You just had to bleed enough to find it, and she knew all about bleeding. "I've got voices," Gordon murmured, elbowing her ribs. His head tilted, eyes gone distant, listening with his sonomancy-enhanced hearing. "She's already in the keep." He licked his lips. They're heading toward the inner galleries overlooking the courtyard, then the rooftop garden. Her breath snagged, hands shaking, as she raised her eyeglass again. "Where exactly?" "I'll guide you," he said. They shifted along the tavernier roof, keeping low. Gordon tapped her shoulder twice, then pointed toward the right part of the courtyard at an arched window cut into the keep's upper gallery. She lifted the eyeglass, and there was her daughter. "That's my girl," she croaked, holding back a sob. Whaler, you clever bastard, I could kiss you for this tip. After 10 long years of hunting crazed sonomancers, soul-curdling betrayals, and crushing guilt, she finally saw her daughter. This wasn't a glimpse. Not like in the country estate or the villa, face hidden by hair, or a flash of a profile before she disappeared around a corner. Her mouth went dry, breathing in her daughter now past 16 seasons. She strained to glimpse the child who used to run barefoot in the grass, heels caked with mud, giggling as she wiped her nose on Alandra's skirts. She walked at a brisk pace, so it was hard to focus. The nose, blast it. That same one that used to wrinkle when Agi lied about sneaking honeycombs. It was the same sharp nose as Alandra's. Agnieszka, concubine of Sati Lublinin, the elder of Great House Lublinin, walked a little behind Sati's right shoulder. Straight-backed, head held high, she moved with a quiet certainty that bent the space around her. Other concubines trailed her daughter. One with long raven hair held her train. Servants stepped aside, knuckling their brows in an approximation of a bow. Guards opened doors. One placed his hand on her shoulder. She jerked, glaring at the guard who flinched and promptly released his hand. Her daughter wasn't being led. She was escorting Lublinin the elder. Sati spoke. Agi leaned in, murmured something. Sati stopped. A descendant stopping to listen to a concubine? Alandra's eye burned, boring into Sati Lublinin, waiting for the blow to land across Agi's face. "What's going on?" she hissed. Gordon breathed near her ear. "Your daughter's advising the elder about descendant Waboff. If he can be trusted." Advising? Everyone heard the rumors of Sati's depravity, binding naked concubines in painful poses, painted and jeweled, left to serve as furniture while courtiers drank and gossiped around them, or bridled like horses, whipped with reins, and stabled after Sati sated her lust. Imagining what her daughter endured over the years lit a fire in her. "I'll kill them all for what they've done." Her fingers cramped around the eyeglass, but the blow never came. Sati laughed at something Agi said, and both women placed hands on each other's shoulders, giggling. Alandra shook her head. This didn't make a lick of sense. White and gold cloaks parted as Sati Lublinin entered the keep proper, trailing silk and authority. A great caw split the sky as one of the warhawks leapt into the air. Alandra lowered the eyeglass, fingers trembling as she slumped to the floor of the Tavernia's rooftop garden, her back against the rough stone wall, heart thundering. "We've found her," she sighed, as if saying it would make it more real. Again. Gordon nudged her shoulder, his minty breath cutting through the stink of their travel grime. "And thank the fates for District Lublinen's obsession with garden rooftops. They're heading up to the keep's garden. Thought we'd be out all night confirming your man's prattles. What's his name? The peddler of secrets? Wait, don't tell me." Gordon scratched at the thicket that was his beard. "Whaler, ain't it? Never cared for him, but he can sniff out information like a rat in a shithouse. Eh, Al?" She quirked a smile and wiped the dampness from her eyes with the heel of a grimy palm. "Maz, what was that business? Laughing with her indentured master." Her gaze met his, and there was that damned look. He didn't rush to fill the silence, just held her gaze, steady as a shield. His soft cornflower blue eyes said so much. "We'll get Agnieszka back. I'm with you to the end." The same look he'd given her all those years back on the first day of SEAL Warden training, when she'd laid out that mouthy instructor yelling at him. The SEAL Warden Guild had been birthed in blood after the God War, when Betten and his 100 mad heroes sealed the old gods in a magical prison. The Guild used words like honor, duty, and protection to polish their image. Strip off the fancy cloaks and sigils, and you'd find simple slave hunters, But their prey was anything but simple. They hunted and collared sonomancers. Yet, it wasn't what Gordon's eyes said, she reckoned, but how Gordon looked at her that promised she wasn't beyond saving. Gordon believed in her. Somehow, through all of it, he still looked at her like she was more than the sum of the wreckage she'd caused. The young woman who had once protected the weak. That fierce, righteous, and, dare she hazard, honorable woman he'd once met in the dirt and dust of warden training and on hunts, felt like a stranger, soft clay remolded into a harder, colder thing. Gordon shrugged, his hand finding hers, big, calloused, solid, not stopping her shaking, just being there for her. It was passing strange, he said. I heard the other concubines refer to Agi as Palak. Defer to her. He scratched his beard. Maybe she is the captain of concubines. You didn't raise a girl who breaks easy, he smiled. A mystery for another day, yes? She smirked. Thanks, Maz. Her voice was almost tender. For sticking with me. For everything. He grinned, teeth white beneath a tangled beard, filthy with road dust. She spotted some grey in it. Old wolves both, still hungry, still dangerous, just slower to bite. At least he was slower. The years hadn't slacked her rage. She reckoned nothing would until she got Agi back. He slapped her shoulder and chuckled. A deep, throaty sound like a rock slide. Least I could do. Besides, didn't have a choice. My niece would have my bollocks for coin if I didn't see this through. He clapped, and a puff of dust billowed in the air between them. He coughed, swatting the cloud away. Now that we know for true, your girl is here until the Remembrance Festival this winter, and not rotting in a Lublinin country estate, we can cook up a scheme to rescue her over dinner. His stomach growled. Frontier folk can't cook worth a damn. I need a meal with real flavor and a bath. He sniffed and recoiled. Phew, you could do with some scrubbing, but that's nothing new. She punched his gut, which felt like trying to tenderize a slab of granite, but the grunt he let out was satisfying enough to make up for her throbbing knuckles. She wished it was as easy as drawing up a plan. When they snuck into the villa, they had nearly died, and the villa had fewer guards. With all the silentium and security at the keep, it felt impossible. They needed more men. Not yet, she said, jaw tightening. After all these years, I need to be close. Listen to her laugh, hear her speak. Her voice cracked, and tears blurred her vision. Sentimental rubbish. I sound a damned fool. Gordon raised big calloused hands in a calming gesture, his warden oath tattoo catching the light. You could use a dose more foolishness, Al. But he cast his eyes across the Tavernia's rooftop garden, empty dining tables, peeling vines, and the door leading downstairs into the Tavernia proper. How long before our greedy tavern keeper downstairs lets paying customers up? We don't exactly blend in. She grimaced. They were road-stained, hair hanging in greasy ropes, crusted in sweat, blood, and bad luck. Her belt jangled with weapons, a rifter blade, truncheon, knives. Gordon's quarterstaff lay at his feet, twin throwing hammers tucked behind his back, and a bow rested against the wall. Their long dusters were stiff with frontier filth, not exactly the dress code for Rakovian's elite rooftop diners. They'd ridden into the capital of the Salvian Empire at dawn, fresh from a private hunt in the western frontier gone sour. 2 cycles wasted chasing thieves, rumors of thieves, and ghosts of rumors, and they still hadn't recovered the ancient scroll Krakus the Elder wanted. No, wanted wasn't the word. Krakus hungered for it, like a drunk craves the bottle or a reishi smoker her next puff. I want to see her, Really watch her. He blinked. You want to watch her? Up there. He pointed towards the keep's rooftop garden. Oh no, not again. Her lips curled and nodded, pointing to a taller building closer to the keep. It's a storehouse, or apartments for foreign dignitaries. I won't take long, Maz. Besides, I reckon we may hear something useful to get inside that blasted fortress. Storms. I wish I had the coin to hire a crew that knows their business infiltrating keeps. Maybe Krakus'll honor his end of your deal for once. Buy out your girl's indenture from Sati Lublinin. She scowled. Your chasm cracked. We failed him, Maz. Lost his precious scroll. Last man that failed Krakus. His cousin. He garroted. No, freeing Iji ain't got a splinter of a hope. Gordon cocked his head, a picture of irritating calm. Partly failed, in my estimation. We caught one of them thieves, didn't we? Just trying to look on the sunny side, Al. He frowned. No need to give me that look. Her scowl deepened. Gordon ignored her and hummed, gliding a thick finger across Marta's slimy skin. The red-eyed marsh frog nestled in a pouch hanging around Gordon's neck, croaked with pleasure. Marta was his tuner, the key Gordon needed to access sonomancy, the old gods' plague on mankind. The old gods had gifted power over sound and wind over a millennium ago when they arrived on their world. There were 4 types of sonomancers, and Salvians despised them all, partly because they hated anything touched by the old gods, who had intended to enslave everyone, and partly because sonomancers eventually lost their minds and went on slaughtering rampages. Tuners could be anything, stone, bone, bug, or beast, and were always present when a poor bastard first snapped and became a sonomancer. Accessing sonomantic power required triggering the tuner, and through visions, reliving the moment you snapped, agony sharp enough to shatter your soul, or triumph so intense it reforged you. Every tuner had a story, and Marta's slimy hide held Gordon's. He cupped Marta in his hand and eyed Alandra warily. Well, mistress of impatient fools, if we must have a look, let's be about it. I can hear they are nearly there. But if I'm climbing on your back, you're paying for dinner. She nodded. For the entire week. She grunted and removed her tuner from her duster pocket. Grime and time had dulled the violet ceramic beads. Rusted bronze bells clinked softly on the worn leather cord. She slipped the cord around her wrist and took a deep breath, long and shaky like those walking to the gallows. Exhaling slowly, she tilted her head up. The sky was a bruised purple. The watery sun smeared the horizon a butcher's pink. A cool breeze kissed her face, whispering through the tavernia's garden, carrying smells of herbs and the faint sounds of district life. The square below churned and rumbled, with peddlers shouting their wares, residents haggling for food, and buskers tumbling for coin. She waited until the noise of the city settled into her bones, until her heartbeat slowed. Then she flicked her wrist. The bells on her tuner sang, a shrill, discordant clatter that shattered the moment. They burrowed into her skull, rattling her teeth, and then the world unraveled like frayed rope. The watery sun melted. The garden blurred, warped, and was gone. She was back in her family home, preparing supper. The air was thick with the smell of baked bread and herbs simmering in broth. She'd relived this vision more times than she could count, but every detail clawed at her heart afresh. Her husband, whoever he was, hovered in the periphery, face blurry, seared away with other pieces of her past, the price of sonomancy, memory. Every use shaved something off her. Name, place, face, feeling. As the abyss grew larger, she became less. Finished, Ma. Little Aji's voice rang out, bright and full of triumph. She held up a bracelet, the beads strung tight in a messy loop. Her smile, with a few teeth growing in, brought the kind of joy that no amount of coin could buy. "Can I rub down, Violet?" Alandra smiled, same as always in the echo, because that was the trap. How the vision pulled you in. "That'll be fine, dear one. Make it quick. We'll eat soon." Aji's small round face puckered as if she'd tasted something sour. "Are you cooking?" She swatted her with a towel, laughing. "I'm still wrangling out the particulars, but I think I've cooked a fine stew this time. Now get." Aji giggled and darted away, shrieking as the towel swatted her backside. Then the vision blurred. Time stuttered and lurched. She heard Aji scream and ran to the door, throwing it wide. A masked rider on a black horse hauled Aji over his lap. Her tiny fists pounded uselessly at the rider's chest. 3 more riders flanked him, faces hidden behind strips of filthy cloth. Violet, her faithful mare, lay sprawled in the dirt, kicking feebly as blood pooled under her heaving belly. Alandra's lungs burned as if she had swallowed fire. "Aji!" Her daughter twisted, pudgy hands reaching out, tears streaking her cheeks. "Ma, save me!" The horses reared, their hooves pounding the dirt. Then they took off in a thunder of horseflesh and clouds of dust. She leapt off the porch, legs pumping, a scream shredding her throat. But no matter how fast she ran, they rode faster. They always did. She roared, rage and fear warring for first blood. A hand clamped over her mouth, rough, calloused, and reeking of herbs. She blinked, and for a heartbeat, she was back on the rooftop, biting into Gordon's hand, cursing and tasting blood. Blink. She was back in the echo, running after the riders. Still too slow. Aji's screams tore her apart. "Calm yourself, Ayla. Just breathe. Work needed doing." The echo fought her, dragging her back to the worst moment of her life. She knew it was only a memory, knew it was ink on a page long since written, but grief didn't care about reason. Grief had no mercy and would never release its heavy grip on her heart. Fighting the echo would trap her, making her a prisoner in her mind, reliving Aji's kidnapping for hours, days even, until her mind shattered. So, she did the only thing she could do. She surrendered to her fate, or tried to. She fell to her knees as Aji's cries faded to whispers in the wind. The kidnapper's horses blurred on the horizon. She fell forward, her hands digging into the dirt, and wept. Strands of spit hung from her lips, as something between a sob and a beast's last howl tore loose from her. She looked up. There was another horse in the barn. Maybe she could catch up. She couldn't just surrender, could she? The vision lurched, the ground becoming firmer. As she got to one knee, preparing to run toward the barn, the smell of grass and horse filled her nose. The echo was consuming her. She had only one chance to escape it. "Please, forgive me," she mumbled between her sobs. She couldn't protect her daughter. She was already gone. So she sat back down on the ground and gave up. As soon as she accepted her failure, something inside cracked wide open. An explosion of sonomantic power tore loose, flooding her veins like merciless hot iron. Her skin crackled with energy, chest heaving as though her ribs might burst. With her eyes snapping open and her spine bowing, she was suddenly up, crashing into Gowden and knocking him flat. Her senses sharpened. She could smell roasting meat from the square, hear worms writhing in the flower beds nearby, and the shuffle of boots in the tavernia below. Every breath came fast, shallow, heart thrumming in her chest, making her bones shake. Gordon grunted from the ground, cradling his bleeding hand. Was it a bad one? On a scale between getting your nails pulled out with pliers or being burned alive, she rasped, about in the middle. He grumbled as she hauled him up easily with one hand. The old god's essence was eager, demanding action. She aimed her hands at the roof's red tiles on either side of her, readying to sono-jump. Hop on! He cursed, but she felt his weight settle on her back, arms clamped around her chest. She reached out, and like wrangling a horse, yanked on the sonomantic power. With a surge, she blasted into the air undulating around her hands. The dignitary's tower approached fast. The wind whipped her hair, whistling past. She wanted to cry out, but they'd be locked up or worse if spotted. Gordon muttered a prayer to his ancestors, squeezing her tight. They crested the tower's roof, and for once, she'd aimed well, landing where she'd intended. They stumbled onto another rooftop garden, their legs tripping each other, and crashed into bushes. Holding the power of the old gods, she didn't feel the gash on her arm. All that mattered was Aggie. She spared Gordon a glance, then with effort bridled the vibrating power rattling her bones. Then she crouched behind the weathered stone wall, encircling the roof, and peered over its ledge. The rough surface scraped her palms as she focused her sono-enhanced senses on the keep's rooftop garden. Aggie was the first to enter. She was stunning, a woman grown. She glided beside a house functionary, her head tilted back, laughing. Dark lavender hair with shocks of midnight red tumbled over her shoulder like silk dyed with twilight. Gold ringlets kept the hair bundled and chimed as she walked. Half a head taller than her companion, she moved like a languid cat, and those dark magenta eyes sparkled in the fading light like jewels. Her skin was perfect, oiled and shining like dark glass. She must have gotten her beauty from her father. Alandra brushed her fingers against her scarred cheek and shook her head. If Wayla hadn't sworn it was her, if she hadn't heard her guards call out her daughter's full name in the villa, she wouldn't have believed this wondrous creature sprouted from her loins. Aggie's laughter was sharp and clear, slicing through the distance like birdsong. A golden rope held her white linen dress snug around her waist. She painted around her eyes and etched a dark line from her eyes to her temples. Her hand rested on the hazel-haired house functionary's arm. She spoke well, far more eloquent than Alandra's kin, cleverly and effortlessly bandying words with great house members and functionaries, as if born to it. The functionary gestured to his wine cup, said something clever. Aggie glanced at the cup, then at his face. If House Merrow's harvest numbers are true, she said, you're drinking next year's losses. He blinked, then burst out laughing. For all of Aggie's captivity, she appeared undamaged, though she knew the way descendants could break someone. She sighed, a deep, bone-weary sound. The weight of fear and guilt she'd carried for years felt a bit lighter. My daughter, will you remember me? Will you hate me for leaving you alone all these long years? How much you've changed. She had the explanations prepared. The empire was vast, and Alandra had few connections. It took years to earn coin, and a reputation as a seal warden to bribe folks for favors, for information. Finally, she turned to the descendants and got an audience with Krakus, the most powerful of the stinking lot. He dished out promises like candy and never delivered for years. Until now, he'd sworn he'd found Aggie in House Lublinen's employ, though he never facilitated a meeting, no matter how many times she asked, no matter how many times she achieved the impossible with his private contracts. She even refused to accept privateering contracts, once going so far as to try to blackmail him. Yet, what could she do? He had hundreds of guards under his power and was the bloody co-guardian of the Empire. After all these years, she'd begun to think he was playing her for one of the 10 fools, dangling hope like bait for his gain, that he didn't have a storming notion where Aji was. Then, nearly 3 years ago, he told her about House Lublinin, and that had changed everything. Movement by the rooftop garden's entrance drew Alandra's attention. White and gold cloaked house guards shifted their positions, their polished halberds parting like steel teeth. Agay and the others turned as Sati Lublinin entered, gliding across the stone tiles with a grace that bordered on inhuman. Sati, the elder of Great House Lublinin, was dressed like a bride awaiting vows. White and gold silk flowed from her shoulders, trailing behind her like a tide. She had tied her sunflower hair back in intricate braids and gold ringlets. They had oiled her bronze skin, and she wore gold slippers with laces that wound around her calves. Necklaces, bracelets, more metal than a blacksmith's bench, clinked softly as she moved. Her regalness contrasted with the paler, stumpier sonosmith by her side. Wrinkled and rumpled, his black trousers and vest looked as though he'd slept in them. His plain grey tunic had stains. Knives and many tools of Alandra's profession jingled on his belt. Sonosmiths dabbled in the arcane, experimenting with sonomancy and metallurgy. But then, why all the sharp ends? "Did it work?" asked the hammer-jawed man lounging against a fruit tree. "Unquestionably," said the sonosmith, voice dripping with contempt as he pulled a vial of silvery liquid from his pocket. "Your first batch." Sati Lublinin's painted lips curled into a smile. "Better than our wildest expectations." Hammerjaw grinned, setting his cup on a table and taking a few eager steps forward, eyes wild. "Mother, our house will endure for another millennium. It will have no equal." Sati raised her hand, silencing him with a sharp look. "Few equals, my son. Think on what we could achieve with the substance." She gestured her hand to the vial, and the right allies. Lublinin the elder's gaze flickered over her shoulder, her expression tense. Alandra licked her salty lips and glanced toward the rooftop garden's entrance. Heavy boots clicked on tiles. A moment later, Krakus the elder emerged, flanked by cerulean cloaked guards. His presence filled the space like no other. He cut a striking figure, taller than the others. He wore loose-fitting clothes, the cuffs stitched with the sigil of House Krakus in vivid cerulean, muscular like a seasoned seal warden. His black hair, wavy and damp with oil, fell neatly to his shoulders. His trim beard gleamed in the dying light. What was it with descendants and oil? She could see the appeal for fighting, to slip out of someone's grip. But descendants didn't fight. They paid others for the privilege. Maybe it was a sexual thing. She spat, her stomach knotting. "Ancestors curse you, Krakus." "Bettin's balls. What's he doing here?" Gordon asked. "Maybe he's paying off your daughter's indenture." She worked, spit back in her dry mouth, and turned to Gordon. "Betraying me or honoring our bargain? We lost his precious scroll, Maz." She ground her teeth until her jaw ached. "Betrayal, I reckon." Her daughter's voice cut through her boiling anger. She turned back toward the rooftop, fingers scratching against the rough stone ledge. "Your Honor, may I?" asked Agnieszka, her tone measured but strained. Sati's perfectly arched brow rose a fraction. She glanced at Krakus, then waved a languid hand. "Yes, my Palak. What say you?" "What you've permitted is abhorrent," Agnieszka said, her voice trembling as she gestured to the sonosmith's silvery liquid vial. "Beyond cruel to treat sonomancers so. There must be another way. You must stop." "Must stop," Krakus spoke the words slowly, voice deep and commanding. Sati, I am disappointed. You presume to ally with me while allowing low bloods to issue commands? Sati Lublinin blanched, bracelets jingling while she fussed with her gown. She looked pained, like she'd bitten into a plum and found a maggot squirming inside. Then her face hardened when she leveled her gaze upon Agnieszka. Sati clicked her tongue and shook her head. You overstep, child, she said. Favored among my pets does not mean favored to speak as you wish. I see now that I've been too indulgent. A responsible master should never be shy with the whip. Lublinin the elder sighed, almost wistfully, her gaze lingering on Agnieszka as though appraising her value. But how does one discipline such a beautiful creature without ruining such perfection? I may have a solution, said the sonosmith. Sati glanced his way, her lips curled into a predatory smile. Why, Yarek, you devil, I love surprises. What do you suggest? The sonosmith whispered so low in Lublinin the elder's ear that at nearly 200 strides distance, even Alandra's sonomantic-enhanced hearing couldn't make out the words. Sati Lublinin giggled, called him a devil again, and Yarek strode inside the keep. Agnieszka crumbled at Lublinin the elder's slippered feet, raising a trembling hand. Forgive me, Your Honor. I meant no offense. Alandra growled. All Alandra wanted was to hear her daughter's voice, do some scouting, and not watch her daughter be punished. Her nails bit into her palms. Krakus, you oily bastard. You are supposed to free Aji, not encourage that viper to punish her. The sonomantic power inside her swelled, a storm pounding against the cage she'd forced it into. I'm done waiting, Maz. No more planning. My girl is right there. She jabbed her finger toward the keep. I see that look in your eyes, said Gordon. Don't do it, Al. Fate's sweaty ass, Maz. I'll be damned if I sit by and watch my daughter suffer. Her nose flared as she took off, boots pounding the length of the roof, running through flower beds, tossing tables aside, Gordon's cursing trailing behind her. Her guts twisted as she thought about the vile acts Sati Lublinin had likely forced on her sweet girl, years searching Rakov, the greater empire, the rift, more years with Krakus dangling Agi in exchange for dark work. It hardly had to be said. Her patience was a rotting corpse. Lungs burning, she skidded to a halt, crouching low, hands splayed, prepared to sono-jump. She reached the end of the roof, with the keep's rooftop garden directly ahead. A wide street yawned between her and her destination. Drawing on her power felt like lassoing a hurricane. The air warped and rippled around her. Gordon shook her arm, out of breath. Look, damn you, there is a silentium pillar near Sati. Horse shit, she growled. Gordon frowned, pointing a thick finger. The left corner, near the entrance to the garden. Fate's breath, Al. Look at the flowers. She narrowed her eyes. Among the vibrant blooms sat a squat ash-grey metal pillar, no taller than a child. Black smoke swirled and danced across its surface. One of the rarest and most valuable minerals in Salvia, reduced to a garden ornament. Gordon's voice was a low growl. Even if you jump straight again, which I doubt, you'd land in their midst with no powers. I see 10 guards and more in the hallway inside the keep. You can't kill that many. She cursed, glaring at Gordon. What could she say? He was right. Gordon sighed, releasing her arm. I see it in those golden eyes of yours, he said. Reason's taken root, eh? A scream pierced the air, and she jerked around to see Igi bound flat against a wooden plank, pitched at an angle so Alandra could see her face. The sono-smith directed a pair of big bastards to drag a large brazier near Agi. The arcane guildsman's face was a mask of indifference as he plunged an iron rod into the coals, whistling tunelessly. Sati Lublinin untied Argy's golden slippers with deliberate care. I have no notion why you think you can speak to me, a descendant. The blood of Betin, that way. Clicking her tongue, Sati slid the slippers off and ran her hand across Agnieszka's smooth legs, over her breasts, before cupping her cheek in what approximated tenderness. Jarek, you may begin. The sonosmith removed the hot iron from the brazier, the tip glowing bright. Rage rekindled in Alandra's belly. A curtain of red stained her vision. They are going to brand my daughter like bison. Her fury fed on guilt, on years of powerlessness, on every ounce of suffering she'd endured to reach this moment, and the fear in Aji's eyes. Her dear one didn't deserve to suffer. She wouldn't allow it. She snarled, spat, cursed the fates, the ancestors, the old gods, and Sati Lublinin for stealing her child, but most of all, she cursed Krakus. All these bloody years, capturing, killing, betraying, drowning in filth for House Krakus. All for what? He promised, she hissed through gritted teeth. Maz. Krakus swore he'd see Iji freed and unharmed. Jarek stepped forward and drove the glowing iron into the tender sole of Agi's foot. Her daughter's scream tore through the air, raw and jagged. Her legs thrashed against her bonds. The sickening hiss of seared flesh filled her ears. The sharp stench of charred meat clawed its way into her nostrils. My girl, Alandra roared, surging forward, but Gordon caught her, crushing her against his chest, smothering her shouts. He whispered, which enraged her further. She thrashed against him, fists pounding his shoulders and ribs, nails scraping for purchase. Finally, she howled into his chest, her rage a wild storm battering against an immovable mountain. Heartbeats later, after her roaring ceased to whimpers, Gordon released her, stepping back to see what the wild beast would do next. She staggered like a drunk and glanced back to the keep. Crying, Iji begged Sati Lublinin to stop, begged for forgiveness, swore obedience. Her right foot, blistered black and raw, bore the cruel sigil of House Lublinin. Krakus loomed over Agi with a bored expression. Contrition is the first step, low blood. His deep voice was full of pride. But the lesson has only begun, unless, he turned to Sati, you have not the resolve. Sati's lips curled. I see things through, Krakus, same as you. She turned to the sonosmith. Proceed, Jarek. Alandra's legs gave out. Stone kissed her knees. She was dizzy, and her rage nearly snuffed out. She was back in the past, her child being taken away while she watched. She was always watching. There was nothing she could do to stop it. Not then. Not now. What wouldn't she do to save her child? She thought long and hard, but no answer came.
Chapter 2. A Son's Vengeance. Bez woke in darkness, deep in a pit, having failed his parents yet again. The night air was heavy and damp. The acrid stench of feces had lessened, but his nose still burned with the stink of decay. He felt like he would never wash the smell from his body. What does it matter now? The moist earth offered scant relief from the southern waste's merciless heat. Sweat slicked his body. His skin felt on fire, reminding him of how the Salvians slowly roasted meat on spits. He pinched his right nostril and blew out a thick wad of phlegm. How long? How squalling long have they left me down here to rot? He traced fine grooves in the earthy wall of his cage with long, dirty fingernails. 27 days he'd scratched before he'd given up counting. Then the real fun began. Weeks of wading in his own shit like a rutting hog once the pit guards had stopped retrieving his privy bucket. Weeks more of starvation when the obvious solution to avoid living in a hog pen penetrated his addled mind. No food, no feces. His only companions were self-pity, nightmares, and maggots gorging on his noxious filth, and the moans of indentured miners, likely years past their freedom date, and collared all tribe, his people, drifting down in his dirt tomb. "Water!" cried a pit prisoner. "Bread! Just a heel of bread for Seal's sake," whined another. "It was Tuftson," someone snivelled. "He made me do it. It was him. Please, let me out." "Shut your gobs," bellowed a voice. The sounds washed over him, had become part of him, familiar as his gnawing hunger or the ever-present worms wriggling against his hot skin. Even without starlight, his people's blessed vision allowed him to penetrate the murk. He watched his sunken stomach rise and fall, each rib pressed against his skin. Sour spit filled his mouth. He wasn't surprised that an army of worms assaulted the sides of his stomach and shoulders while he dozed. The slimy little grubs coated him with a sticky sludge, but he was past caring. Hands trembling, he brushed the vanguard away that had reached his chest. His legs were a lost cause. Scores of grubs covered them, so only his toes peeked out. Bez yawned. Heat-induced spans of intermittent sleep kept him drowsy and muddled. Sometimes his parents sat beside him in the dirt, back from the dead, singing and laughing. Other times, he was in the mountains climbing crags, or swimming in crystalline lakes so clear he could see rocks at the bottom. Moments ago, he was a boy again, running barefoot with his cousins through Uncle Darian's fields, the tall grass whipping at his legs. Then a cry from a prisoner, or the damp air clogging his nose had awakened him, shattering the vision. What was real or imagined blurred. Maybe I'm with my uncle still, and the pit is only a nightmare. Hesitantly, he stretched his hands to either side, fingertips brushing the cool, root-tangled walls. Feet firmly pressed against damp earth. Not a nightmare. He moaned like a wounded animal. "Guardian spirits above," he wheezed, not wiping the hot tears streaking down his cheek. "There's no way out." But that was a lie. There was a way. His fingers searched for the gouge in the wall, finding the sharp-edged shard of obsidian he'd hidden there. My final escape. He pried it free, hand shaking, and pressed the jagged edge against the soft flesh of his right wrist. A bead of blood sprang from the tip. "I'll do it this time," he said to the crude face carved into the wall. A pause. "I know that's what I said last time. By the All-Spirit. I can't—" His throat tightened. "I can't take it anymore." "Enjoying your new home, demon blood?" asked an unwelcome voice from the pit's metal cage above. "Dorota," he rasped, tongue clumsy from disuse. What a pleasure. He hated Jan's henchwoman, but at that moment, his life in the balance, he clung to her words like a drowning man to driftwood. Her chuckles echoed in the earthy tomb. "Liar. Play it friendly as you like, Slit Eyes. But we both know what you are." She crouched, damp hair plastered to her face, mouth hooked in a grin that never reached her eyes. "I saw the demon in you when we caught you on that ridge. Thought you were clever, didn't you? Thought the aqueduct workers wouldn't notice you and your two friends? What is the count? Your third?" It was his fourth failed attempt to escape the Maker's Metal mining camp, but he didn't bother correcting the murdering bitch. "I failed them just like my parents. Tala dead, Marcel beaten or worse, Anelia missing, and Bez. Well, he would die in darkness, dooming his parents' souls to wander the Shadowlands forever, never to reunite with their ancestors. He choked down a sob, not wanting to give her any satisfaction seeing him broken. "Never you mind," Dorota continued, voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Another week of starvation will break you. You'll be as docile as your devil kin then. After that," she shrugged, "I suppose that depends on how useful Jan finds you." She bared her teeth. What? No witty reply for dear old Dorota? Bez's mouth opened, mustering a suitably obnoxious response. Yet the weight of the past 5 years snapped it shut. Jan, the mining camp's warden, had taken an interest in Bez the day he arrived 15 years ago. At first he'd acted like a kindly uncle, but the facade had rotted away over recent years, revealing the sadistic man underneath. He had endured every cruelty Jan could devise. Humiliation, days of work without rest, mutilation, pain, and now the pit. For what? Mining productivity? "Ah, but where are my manners?" Dorota said, voice dripping with insincerity. "All this jabbering must be making you thirsty, demon blood." She made a gurgling sound and sent a fat glob of spit splashing down. It landed with a squelch on his pale belly. He didn't even bother scrubbing it off. Demon blood. The slur still hurt even after 15 years in the camp. He hadn't expected the Salvian miners and camp workers to welcome him as a brother, but the widespread hatred of his people had been a shock. Growing up east of the rift, all tribe avoided Salvians, but there was no venom in it. His kin were simply tired of the insults, theft of property, occasional violence, and proselytizing whenever they ventured into the Salvian Empire. Did it matter if his people didn't view the Soneus, the old gods, as evil tyrants, but as forces of nature? Who cared if all tribe treated sonomancers with dignity instead of collaring them with ancient artifacts meant to control their power? Who cared? Salvians cared, and with a fanaticism he'd only seen in the eyes of the prophet's acolytes. "What? Nothing clever to say?" He remained silent, clenching the shard of obsidian. No need to read the compass to know another comment would produce more spit. Dorota placed her hands on her paunch and laughed, kicking a shower of dirt and rocks into the pit. She lingered for a moment, satisfied she'd cowed him, he wagered, then walked away, her laughter echoing behind her. Bez's right hand throbbed. He released his grip on the shard and glanced down. The sharp edge had bit into his palm. Blood welled, tracing jagged lines across his skin like dark roots. "What's that?" Bez glared at the carved face. "Coward, am I? Let's see how well you endure a cycle of starvation and years of torture." He chuckled. "Painful experiments to increase mining productivity?" He thrust up his left hand. "Does cutting off a finger count as an experiment, you smug son of a bitch?" Bez shook his head. "I'm done with your whispers and judgment. Done with Jan, the pain, and the fear of what he'll do next. I just can't keep going." He pressed the obsidian shard against his right wrist and drew a shallow breath, summoning the courage to escape and meet his parents in the Shadowlands. He glanced at the pit's narrow slice of sky one last time, sending a prayer to his guardian spirits. Was he a coward? Would his parents understand? The clouds had parted, leaving blinking stars like the eyes of old spirits watching from distant black realms. A sky similar to the one that sent Bez on the path to Camp Inferno, to Jan, to the prison pit that would be his grave. It was a sign. He was right to end it all. The air was heavy, hazy, and suffocating. Sweat trickled down his face, stinging his eyes and slicking his grip on the shard. He sucked in a ragged breath, and before he could slice his flesh, he drifted out of consciousness. Memories clawed their way back from the deep like worms in the dark. 15 years ago, the night everything changed.